Well, good morning, everyone. This is Thursday, September 12th, and this is the Budget, Capital, and Personnel Committee at Tompkins County. Let's take the minutes of August 8th. Thank you, Shauna. Thank you, Deborah. Any corrections or changes? Those in favor? Any opposed? Changes to the agenda. We have a different agenda on your desk because the list of resolutions, there was a double hiccup, and two of them were on there twice. So instead of having 11 resolutions, we only have 9, but it's still the same resolutions. Any other changes? Hi, Rich. We're just starting. Are there anything from the public? Well, then we go to our county administrator's report. Looks like we have Norma Jane, our deputy county administrator, here.
Thank you. So we have some resolutions that we're going to take up after in a little bit, but there are a couple of PAR forms that came from the Peak Committee. That's just due to timing. I will say that the first one in your packet on page 16, the RSWC upgrades, this is just a continuation of a project that started in 2021, and it's actually has no expenditures in 2025, so they're just finishing. There will be some additional items that will be finished up in 2025, but there won't be any additional funds needed for that.
Questions on that one, Rich?
Yeah, on page 18, LTD?
Life to date.
Life to date.
Yep.
And then there will be no funding in 25 and 26, but you anticipate spending in?
We're still on.
Oh, I'm sorry.
16.
But you're talking about page.
Yeah, I was on the wrong one. I was on the wrong one.
Okay.
So hold your question just for a minute.
Well, actually, I misspoke a little bit. So there is a $50,000 outlay in 2025, but that's the end of that project.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Right. I had that question on. All right.
All right. Any other questions on 81.61? Okay, then now we can go to 87.47.
And on 87.47, you'll see that there's no budget planned until 2027, and that's just mainly due to the fact that this program has over $1 million in its account, and it's not being spent as quick. They have time to spend those funds, so there really wasn't a need to continue that $200,000 contribution to the natural infrastructure.
That sort of makes sense, doesn't it? Are we going to be able to spend down that $1 million that we've got?
I don't see anybody here from planning, but they are working, little by little. It just depends on the projects that get submitted for the work. So. Will we need it in 2027? I'm not sure, but we will evaluate it when we get into, when we start planning for that budget.
Rich?
On page 19, the note, remove funding for, is that 2024 or 2025?
I don't think we funded this.
Yeah, we removed the funding for 2024 through 2027. So that's what that is saying. So we removed it in 2024. We don't intend to put it back in until 2027.
Then I was confused because the bar chart seems to show 2024 spending, but that's just life to date.
Life to date, yeah.
But none in 24.
That's correct, yeah. That was the funding that they had spent or had in their budget.
Deborah?
Yeah, it's been a while since I've been on Peak, and I don't want to speak for the committee or DPS, but my recollection was that we had funded this pretty robustly in its early life, and it's one of those programs where you can't spend the money, you don't go out looking for projects. They come
coming to
looking
them.
for you. So there hasn't been a lot of spending because we haven't had a lot of applicants, and there's no way to predict when that's going to pick up again.
So in that sense, it's like a reserve fund.
Sort of, yeah.
Okay.
And I know how you love those.
I do like reserve funds. It's just not when they tie our hands from making good decisions.
Okay, anything else on that par form? Thanks, Norma. What else?
And the last one was the landfill site improvement, and I know Leo went over this in the Facilities and
I missed that one,
Infrastructure Committee as well, I believe. But this is to, there's just the, at this point, they have to address the leachate and just some of the improvements that need to happen out at the landfill site. So they've planned for this capital project beginning in 2025, and it would be covered within their enterprise funding.
So the only hit on us is the $50,000 for the first one.
Actually, that's coming out of their enterprise fund as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so none of it's really hitting the tax levy.
Rich?
Well, I also had a question. This seems to show that all this cost is bonded, so it's already committed to be spent?
It's planned to be bonded. So when they get ready to start the project, this is pending. This will start in 2025. But when they begin that planning process, they'll reach out to the finance director and they'll have a conversation about how much funding they need. But they maintain I think it's a 16% reserve fund balance to cover their debt or to cover unexpected expenses. So they don't draw below that reserve in their fund. So they will likely come back and ask to ban and bond for this project just to preserve those reserves.
Thanks.
Anything else on this one? What else would you like to talk to us about?
I don't think I have any other updates. We'll have some conversations this evening at the Expanded Budget Committee about kind of just reviewing the book, but we'll do that later. Thank you.
The press release is out this morning about the use of the Key Bank building temporarily for a warming facility for the Code Blue. When can we expect to be hearing about what the cost of the modifications will be and what you're going to need?
I would expect we'll hear about that pretty quickly, probably by next month. I will say I have not been directly involved in these conversations, but I do know that now that this is moving forward, they're going to move pretty quickly. Some of the expenses, the unknown reimbursement from the state, what can be reimbursed and what can't be, I think that's what they're working through right now. And then we should come back with a plan next month, or at least give you an idea of what that will cost.
Okay, I guess the sooner the better.
Yes, indeed.
Especially
yeah.
with the budget process going on.
Yeah, I know that they're looking at the, trying to use as much of what we have presently in the building. And during our conversations with other departments are getting involved in trying to find ways to, I know Reuse is looking at whether we can provide some of the materials or some of the furniture and such, if there's options there. So it's definitely a community effort to find a way to support that and reduce our costs.
There's a tour of that for legislators interested this afternoon at 3 o'clock, I think, that Arel has set up just for everybody's edification. I've been through it before, so the F&I committee did, but folks that haven't seen it may want to go through it and look at it.
Okay.
Okay. Let's move on to our Director of Finance, Lori Scarrett.
Thank you. I don't have any updates today.
Well,
Wow.
Short meeting.
well, and I don't have anything other than what we've been talking about at EBC. And we will have an EBC meeting on Thursday evening, or rather this evening, which is Thursday. And that'll start at 4:30 with that tour possibly ahead of that. Rich?
Yeah, thanks. Lori, as you know, at our last EBC meeting, we started a discussion about how we're going to approach this year's budget. And one of the central questions is trying to determine what our fund balance will be at the end of 2024, rather than using the audited figure from the end of 23. And I was wondering if you could share with us what range you would be able to give us in terms of making an estimate of where you think fund balance will land with the various variables that impact it. I know that's really difficult, and I know that you sit there wanting to be exact and to have a number, which you can't do. But for us to try to use the 23 number, we know we're not accurate, and we know it's going to be different from there. Where it would be critical to understand, is it going up or down in some measure? Is it possible for you to give us an estimate with all the caveats around it, that it's not an exact figure and it's all subject to change?
So with the current processes, design or setup of our departments and finance office and software or lack of, it is virtually impossible to get any sort of real-time information currently. So it would effectively be me throwing a dart at the board, and it would be no more accurate than what you are using from 2023 numbers.
If I could follow up then, what tools do you need in order to give us any kind of real-time sense of what that number, in a perfect world, what would you want to have?
So in the perfect world, I would first of all need the entire county to use requisitions and POs, which would encumber the dollar amounts as they're purchasing things, so that I could readily see that. Right now, I don't see that. So Department XYZ might go make $1 million purchase, and I have no idea that that has even been allocated or promised. I would also need either monthly or quarterly reports from the departments on where they are on claiming grant funds, state aid, et cetera. Often those come in at the end of the year. So throughout the whole year, I have no idea if, they've done a quarter of the claims, a half of the claims, if their claim's been denied and they're not going to get it. There's just lack of real-time information. So among all the variables that you don't know, what's interest rates doing, et cetera, the real-time information that I need to get that feel, I currently do not have.
I'd comment that I'm in my 9th year in the legislature. I've never heard this before. I have not
It was in a memo I sent to all of you several months ago.
Several months, okay.
I remember reading about that.
Okay, then in some months of my 9th year, I've heard about this. How hard is this to fix?
I think, in theory, it wouldn't be a hard lift. You implement requisitions, you get everybody on board to cooperate and relay that information. There would be a ton of training. There'd be setup, and the culture currently at the county, I think, would be a heavy lift.
So are you saying basically there's inertia, that they don't want to change what they're doing?
I think change is difficult for everybody, and this would require, maybe in some instances, more staff for departments that are already understaffed to be entering all those POs. I know it would affect our department. We approve all POs Right now, we only do the POs that are entered over a certain dollar amount. So if we had them for every single PO, it would dramatically increase the workload just on the finance department, not even not counting everybody else's. So I think you would hear from the departments that they would need additional staff as well.
Deborah?
Yeah. I think the problem that we are finally facing is that we finally know how dependent we are on fund balance to keep this thing running. And we are finally confronting systemic issues with how county does finance. That means that we don't have up-to-date fund balance figures. And I think what Lori is too tactful to say is that we have been running on a fragmented financing system. And in order to actually know how much money we have at any given time, we need centralized finance. Because otherwise, there's no way Lori can know how much money has been encumbered in any given year until she gets the purchase order requests. That's where the requisitioning comes in, and that was a big piece of the memo I sent after Veronica and I met with Lori several weeks, if not several months ago. So that's one big piece of this, and I think that this is something that the legislature, starting with this committee and perhaps GO, is going to have to tackle next year, because no department, finance certainly can't go to all of our departments and say, we need to centralize this finance. That's going to have to be something that comes from us as legislators, because the pushback is going to be painful, and the change is going to be big, and nobody likes change. The second piece of this is we need to start considering something that looks like zero-based budgeting, because the way our budget system has worked, at least since I've been here, is that once something goes into target, we never look at it again. It's just assumed that that's always going to be in target. This is the first year I can remember where we actually cut target. And you would think we were taking people's firstborns and throwing them off a tall building. I can understand that. They take that for granted. But that's got to change, because, I've looked at the budget book this year more thoroughly than I ever have, because we're in very straitened circumstances. And frankly, it's appalling, the stuff we're spending money on that we haven't looked at in years. And my final point, which you're going to hear again at our EBC meetings, is when I started on the legislature, this is my 7th budget, our budget was under $200,000 a year. This year's budget is
You mean 200 million?
200 million, yeah, sorry. I wish 200,000. This year, our budget, the budget that Lisa's recommended, is $256,000. I'm sorry, a million, sorry. My mind really doesn't want to go there, I guess. But, obviously, we have been spending and adding, and I know some of it's imposed by the state, but, drunken sailors come to mind. It's like we never see a problem in this county that we don't think is the county's responsibility to solve, and we can solve it by throwing money at it. We're running out of money to throw. We really need to take a good hard look at what we've been doing. And I'm finished ranting, at least for the moment.
Norma.
I just wanted to add, so we have been working as a team, Lori and the finance office and county administration, and we have been trying to address some of these issues systematically within the county. One of the things that we've implemented this year is a grant management program, which is rolling out slowly, but we're trying to get that, so that will help with some of those funds. During budget training, we went over the procurement and purchase order conversation, and we'll continue to do that whenever we have an opportunity to do that with the departments, because it is going to take some time, because there has been a change in culture. I was here 20-some years ago. We did purchase orders for everything. It's a very different culture than where I came from 20-some years ago. So, so there is something has changed from that time to now that now Lori's just trying to, I'm sorry, finance, I don't want to keep calling. We are trying to work through those systems. So it sounds like we're defeated, but we're not, because we're all working together to figure out how to make this go forward. I will also say, and I know this is a huge lift for the finance department right now, but the systems that we're working in, the software that they're using is the same software that's been here for 30 years. Exactly the same software, except for the name change. And it does not provide the tools that they need to be able to run some of the reports that would be of benefit to the legislature. I just wanted to share, this is just from my previous experience to now, and like I said, we are working, departments are coming together trying to figure out how to make it work, how to get these things done, but it will be a slow process because it is a culture shift.
Thanks for that, Norma. And you're right, Deb. Years ago, I kept talking about we probably need to do zero-based budgeting, and in return, I got outvoted on the rollover policy that we had, in which we found a way to spend all the money every year, which was...
Thank God we got rid of that.
Yes, I agree. But it took 20 years. But interesting, I hadn't thought about that, what you just said, Norma, that we did all the purchase orders back then, and that it's gone away now. But I do know, I think we had more people in purchasing back then, didn't we?
We had three. We had 3 people. We had a buyer and 2 purchasing agents. But you couldn't get anything through without doing a PO. You couldn't. It wasn't possible. But we have shifted to a P card, and that's I think that's changed the dynamics as well.
Gotcha. All right. Anything else on this? Rich?
Yeah, a lot of good comments here. And Deborah, I agree with you that scouring through target funding is long overdue. You know, we have not really done our homework in looking at that. At the same time, I fear that in this budget year, we're not being fiscally prudent because we need to be. We're being fiscally prudent because we don't know whether we need to be, because we can't see what our actual numbers are, which is in some ways scarier. And I guess I'd look to county administration and county finance to give us some direction on what it will take to move the culture here and the systems. You know, I would certainly like to see an OTR to get the software that you guys need. And I think a message has to go out to the departments that we're making decisions about departmental budgets partly because we're not getting good information from them. And we have to fix that, you know, in order to serve them. We are all dependent on each other. I would vote in favor of getting you the tools, and I would encourage my colleagues to do the same so that we're not sitting here wondering. At least you could give us a range, because this is, I think, unacceptable to the taxpayers. Thanks.
Shauna.
Thank you, Mike. I actually think it makes sense this year. I mean, obviously, we're going to look through our budget. There are going to be things that we might not want to pursue, but it might be a good exercise this year to let the people know that we fund, that we are going to be doing the zero-based budgeting next year, so that they can plan accordingly. And if they need to increase the service or whatever they need to do, let us know more about what they're delivering, then that might need to be something that happens over the next few months. But I think we should start at a baseline. And I think year after year we do a great job with our budget, but our budget is always a look ahead. And I think it's really important for us to look behind and look in the past, because I think it was Deborah that said, you know, some of the people that we fund, you know, take that funding for granted because it's in target. And I think that whenever they're coming to us as someone that we fund, their main goal is to get into target so that they don't have to come every year and beg for money for their nonprofit. And so if they know that every year they're going to be put in front of us and we're going to question what they're doing for our community, I think that could perhaps be a different conversation, and we might get better service from that. The second thing is, I don't necessarily think going back to the dark ages and doing purchase orders is an awesome idea. I think there has to be some type of balance, and I think that I'm sure department heads will complain for days about what a pain it was to have purchase orders go through and for it to take weeks to buy something that was really important. And so, I'm not sure that going back to the dinosaur ages would be a great idea, but I do think that there needs to be more balance. And, it seems like, even for most Americans, it's easy to hand over a credit card and, not realize where you're going until you get that bill at the end of the month.
Let Norma respond to that, and then we got
Lori might
Deborah.
want to jump in too, but yeah, because
I'm sorry, Lori, too.
the encumbrance, I didn't see Andy either, but the encumbrance purchase order, encumbering those funds doesn't mean they can't use the P card. It just means that they are aligning those funds to use them in a specific way. So I'm going to pick on Staples because that's an easy one to do. So I know I'm going to spend $5,000 in at Staples for the year. I'm going to encumber those funds. That gives the finance department a measure to look at. Now, you can go to use your P card, but it's within that PO when they voucher back. None of that changes. The only thing that changes is that you're making that plan at the very beginning of the year to say, I'm going to spend $5,000 on office supplies at Staples.
Great, thank you for clarifying.
I don't know if that was what you were going to say.
It doesn't slow things down, basically.
Yeah, let Lori.
I just wanted to respond to thank you for your support. I appreciate that. And I just want to make a shameless plug. I did put in an OTR.
Everybody else does.
I did put in 2 OTRs for staffing. I honestly believe I need more than 2 staff, but I would have a very hard time implementing any new software or even getting the software we currently have to where it needs to be for the requisitions without the staff. We can barely keep up with the day-to-day work, much less add on an implementation of software. So the foundation or the building block to get us to where we have to be is I need more staff.
Deborah.
Norma and Lori have taken care of what I was going to say.
Okay, anything else?
Say one more thing.
Sure, go ahead.
Just one more thing, because we were talking about the culture shift, and I just want to make sure that everybody, and anybody who might be listening, is every department is doing their very best to do what they need to do to make their offices run. There is nobody who is being difficult about how they are, but they're budgeting the best they know how within the parameters that they've been given. They're working through the system as they've been trained to do to request purchases and so on. So I just want to make sure that it makes it sound as if it's kind of an us. It's not, because everybody is trying to do the best they can. It really is just a change in process and systems that need to take place, that we have to all work together to make that happen.
Mike? Yes, Lee.
Just a couple observations, I guess, more than anything. Going back to Rich and Lori's initial conversation, I don't think it's so much, to me, it's not so much the budget issue. The budget is what it is. We know what we can expect to receive as revenues and what we're going to spend. We've set that. The issue is cash flow and knowing when those expenditures are going to be and when you can expect to receive your reimbursements. And I'm thinking about some of the grants that we go through, and they may extend over 3, 4, 5 years as they're set up by the federal government or what have you. And yeah, some of the departments probably wait until the end of the grant to submit the entire reimbursement rather than on a quarterly or monthly basis. So that I can see where you've got that going up and down. And then to Deborah's point, yeah, those targets were set in 1994 and 95, and they've never, for the most part, ever been looked at again. And speaking from an old department head standpoint, when you had to get to the over targets, you'd throw something out there possibly that, would be politically awkward to not have renewed.
No.
Can't imagine.
It's, there was a lot built in there, and I'm not saying there's anything deceitful going on, there isn't, but you're using that target to maintain a structure that was designed for 1995 and has been added on to as new initiatives have come along, and we've never gone back and taken a look at those things. But to Shauna's point, to go to a zero-based budget means that this committee or some committee would have to take a look at the whole fiscal policy and how we've set up budgeting units, programs, and so on. And that's how we defined it back then, was through programs, which was a conglomeration of many services that build that target. So it's an effort, but 30 years later, it's probably worth a review.
That's why we get paid the big bucks.
What are we at for programs, Nora? 120, what's that? When you look at all of them, maybe
Functional
more?
units for sure, but yeah, we've got probably, if we were actually looking at program-based budgeting, we don't really do that anymore. We look at by department, yeah.
But the policy still
Policy's still there.
defines it that way.
You're making me feel guilty because that was my first budget for 1995 that I voted on.
Well, you had a community committee of, I don't know, 15 or 20 people, Budget Reorganization Advisory Committee, BRAC, and they
Yes, we did.
operated for 2
Yes, we
years,
did.
and they changed. Through that process, it changed, 30 years worth of budgeting precedents then.
Okay, I think we've kind of talked this one out, so we thank everybody who's participated in this. If, for example, we want to talk about zero-based budgeting, I think it should start here in this committee at some time, probably right after EBC, or maybe even before, I don't know, and just to see whether there's any appetite for it on the legislature.
Good point, Mike. I think we should have that conversation.
Well, what good news has our Commissioner of Human Resources brought us this morning, Ruby Pulliam?
Good news after all of that budgeting talk. So before I get to the good news, I'm going to also add my shameless plug to my favorite legislative committee.
Which one was that?
That's where we are now.
Okay, good.
Not government operations?
Oh, no, Deborah. I share some things with Gio, but this is primary. As Lori has said, I think if I could speak for just HR and all departments across the county, we're all feeling the pressure of budget constraints, staffing issues, lack of training, software that's not reliable and give you real-time information. So it's not without, I just want to make that plug. We're all feeling it, and we're all doing our best to do what we need to do as more projects and activities are added to the workload. You're still trying to balance things. For HR, I did put in an OTR request, but I wanted to thank you all for the temporary assistance you all provided earlier through contingency funds. Without that, we wouldn't be where we are now, especially with the performance evaluations for direct reports. We just have to get creative in how we do things. But we rely on your support. We rely on your guidance. Okay, now the good news. That wasn't too bad, was it? No, wasn't too bad. Okay, good news is the initial dialogues for the direct reports performance evaluations have all been completed. Thank you all very much for your cooperation with the scheduling and going through the process. I think it will be a good process that yields very good results that can be measured. Our HELP program to date, we have submitted 115 titles to the state. Of that, 51 have been approved. Which is good. They're approving them around 3 to 5 per month based upon the number of submissions, and they're receiving submissions from all across the state. And based on that, we have been able to appoint provisional people to their positions without the need of their exams. So that's still ongoing. Hopefully that program will not end at the end of this year, but continue through next year will give us an opportunity to help other employees get permanent positions, permanent status in their positions. The civil service training that occurred on August 8th, I think was very successful. The city really had a lot of attendees, not so many for the county, but around, I would say, less than 10. Less than 10 from the county appeared. But from that, we were able to get the news that more T&E, training and experience exams, are coming aboard. The HELP program will be extended, and it was a very good dialogue between the employees and the state representatives that were there. So I'm thankful for their participation. The employee picnic, we had 702 RSVPs, 450 from county employees with 252 guests. Not all of them showed, but it was one of our biggest turnouts. And I think for the most part, everyone enjoyed themselves. It was a good time. We provided to-go orders for some of those departments whose employees could not attend during those hours. But based upon some of the feedback, we're anticipating that probably next year we will extend it to an hour. If people aren't getting off work until 4, we may have, extend it at least till 6. We extended it to 5 this year. And 10 minutes to 5, we still had people coming because they wanted to attend after they got off work. So we're looking at making some changes to the entire reward and recognition program, just so that we can make it more feasible for employees to participate and also within our budget constraints. The Supervising for Success training program that we've begun will begin September the 17th, and that's for up to 30 supervisory personnel to start through their supervisor's training, the basic levels of supervisory training. So we're trying to do our best to help departments to better organize and to better operate. So that starts on September 17th. And with that, I'll let Larry give you some big numbers, and that concludes our HR report.
Could I ask just one question on the picnic, which was wonderful, by the way? Somebody has asked, where does the money come from for the picnic?
We have a line item.
It's in the budget?
It's in the budget.
All right, that's all I needed to know. Thank you.
All right, well, good morning, everybody. I'm going to run through these numbers pretty quick so we can get moving here. Staff totals is up to 793 staff, 299 election workers, and 98 of the JTPAs. That's the Job Training Partnership Act for workforce. 78 jobs were posted in August, and outreach included job fairs over in Cortland, some really big searches that we have going on, outreach for those. Testing, we had 10 civil service tests posted in August and received 28 applications for those. And for leaves, we had 19 disability leaves, 10 cancer screening, 17 bereavement, 1 jury, and we still have 32 COVID leaves for the month of August.
Lee?
The 793, Larry, is that FTEs for the county excluding the 200 poll workers?
No, that's including.
That's
total.
included?
Yeah, so total.
So you get a lot of vacancies then?
There's several.
If you take the poll workers out, and that puts us down to about 600 workers. What are we approved at, around 800?
I believe it's close to that,
Yeah,
yes.
804, I think it was.
Seems like a
That would be a
big gap.
25% vacancy rate. Yowza.
Really?
These are numbers that record HR interactions with personnel. They don't correlate to the number of approved FTEs. They may be the JTPAs, they may be part-time, they may be these are the interactions coming through HR. So every time we do the personnel actions, transfers, promotions, all of that, that's included in our numbers. But they're not comparable, they're not the same as the number of approved FTEs.
Deborah?
So somebody needs to remind me, when we budget for the scheduled number of FTEs, and then we apply a vacancy rate. Is that how this works? Mm-hmm. And what is the vacancy rate we're applying? It's in single digits, isn't it?
Yeah, I believe, well, we've got about just under $2 million set aside in vacancy expectation, yeah.
Yeah, but 793 is people. It's not.
Yeah, but if those people include election workers and JTPs, I mean, that's, what I'm seeing is almost 300 of those people are not FTEs. Is that right? Is that what you're telling me?
You speak positions, right? These are, it's a little different because you talk about available positions, not necessarily budgeted. Is that, you're not looking at budget, this is not part of it?
We're not looking at budget at all.
That's the difference between budget and HR. HR doesn't look at budget.
Right.
So what are we budgeting for?
In FTE.
Laura's, rather Lisa's letter, she says that for 24, they had a vacancy factor of 2%, but for the new 25, they're using 5%, approximately 1.9 million, it says here.
That's right. And we've, right now, I mean, this is a snapshot in time, but right now our budgeted, we have about 100 positions budgeted vacant. And those are positions, not FTEs. I don't have a calculation for the FTEs.
So there could be
After.
20 people in the same position.
Correct. And that's the
instance.
difference between these numbers.
Lori's one position, but she might have 3 account clerks that are one position, but 3 bodies that fill that title. Is that?
At different times, yes. But at all times, they come through HR and get calculated under our numbers because they have to be onboarded or moved. So we count those as people versus the FTEs. The position may be one FTE, but there may be 3 people in that position at some point.
Would the software help us with that?
Yes. We have delayed implementation or even revisiting the software that we currently have 3 different systems that we have to look on in order to get an almost accurate picture of a person's employment, from the application to their roster records that's required by civil service. But at this point, with the budgetary constraints of this year, we've delayed that till next year. So, software.
Deborah?
Yeah, I understand that you're looking at people from a different perspective than the budget looks at. And that's, you know, if there's a communication disconnect, that's for administration and HR to work out. What I'm trying to understand is if we are accurately budgeting for the people that we actually have to pay and how close we're getting to that. Because now I'm confused.
Rich?
Yeah, in Lisa's budget presentation, I have a dim recollection. Was it 8%? Was that number on a screen somewhere? That's our run rate for the difference between budget and FTEs?
It's usually, it is usually double digits, around 11%.
But I saw 8. But
Because if we're over budgeting for personnel, that's another place where
we're going to see a bump for our fund balance, which, again, that's one of the variables. Yeah. Yeah. But it sounds like we're, again, having difficulty tracking that to the point we can really make it usable.
We've gotten
information.
better because of our budget software, thank you, to be able to, like, I just pulled it up. We've got about 89 vacant positions today, right? But that's today. And that's a snapshot in time, but we are able to see that in the UKG system based on what we've budgeted.
So your 11% figure is close to.
It's about, I
Not
just
8.
pulled it up, it's about 11% right now, yep.
And the vacancy numbers that we report include the municipalities, the villages and towns that we administer civil service for.
Make it more complicated.
Indeed.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to note, you mentioned COVID, and, you know, we don't think about COVID, but 4% of our workforce is out on COVID. That's still an issue. Yeah.
One more question, Ruby. What would the opposition be to extending the help provisions? Is it just that it's a sunsetted type allowance
Right
that's got to
now,
be
there
extended?
is no real opposition, which is why they've told us that it will probably be extended until next year. The problem now is you have 2 people at the state who are handling submissions from all 95 agencies under the New York Civil Service. And it's slow. We had to break ours up into 5 titles per submission. But they've told us to keep submitting. They're going to get to them. As long as they're in, they will be dealt with. But there's really no formal opposition to the program because it has been helpful. And with the state's backlog of testing and getting the results to people in time, this seems to be working.
Good to hear.
Ruby, you talked about the civil service presentation, and you said there was good turnout from the city. What about from the towns and villages? Were there people there?
No, not really. Nope, we had someone from the library, which is the only, I think, civil authority that attended other than county and city.
I would have liked to have been there. I apologize that I wasn't able
The
to.
dates were, we understood the dates were, and this was a date given to us by the state, so we didn't actually have time to say, okay, who can attend and when.
Yep.
So it's difficult for people to
We're
get
glad you
out.
held it. That was a good thing to do. And the other thing, Larry, we probably want to remind everybody about the county administrator interviews on Monday. The screening committee has sent 3 candidates to be interviewed by the full legislature. So you're going to have a busy day.
Yeah, they will be Monday, and all 3 candidates I've spoke to, actually yesterday and the day before, they're all very excited to come here, and we're ready to roll. Monday will be a long day, but I'm very, very happy with the candidates that we have. I think we have 3 really good ones, so you guys will have your work cut out for you.
We should be here at the chambers, right?
Here at the chambers, we will start right at noon.
Anything else for Human Resources? Thank you for your report. I don't see Veronica. If she comes in, we'll break for her. Let's go to resolutions for administration, I guess. We have a resolution to update the Administrative Policy Manual, 0240-49, the County Employee Election Poll Workers. That's 12699. Someone want to move it? Shauna's moved it, seconded by Rich. Discussion on this one. We talked about this in GO, and the question that I had, which was answered, was where does the overtime money come from to pay these particular employees who decide they want to volunteer, and it is volunteer, it's not required. And we were told that if the total work week exceeds the 35 or 40 hours which they are hired for, then the overtime would be paid by the county. But that it depends on the individual employee, what the number of hours they work at the polls versus, or integrated with the number of hours they work during the week, as to whether that happens. Have I got that right?
The employees have to get permission from the department to work at the polls on their day. They will receive their regular salary for the number of hours they're slotted to work. The department head can either flex that week so that they don't go over 40, causing the overtime requirement, or, and I think there was some discussion, I wasn't in the last meeting, that the Board of Election would
Cover the straight time.
Right.
Overtime, yep.
Right, so that those funds will be coming from those funds allocated to the Board of Elections.
But the halftime cost is still at the responsibility of the department. So if you haven't budgeted overtime in your budget, then that's could potentially be an issue.
Deborah.
So they're getting paid based on their salary level,
Right.
not based on what we've allocated for people to work the polls.
Correct.
Okay. I know that we need poll workers, but I just don't see, if they want to do this, they should be willing to do it for what we pay a poll worker.
Rich.
I'm going to support the resolution as I did at GO. I think this is a reasonable step to make sure we have full coverage of our polls, and particularly this year where there's been a lot of dangerous language about being a poll worker. So I think having this avenue to get people to make sure our elections run the way we want them to is worth it. And I'd also note on your table you have a small revision to the form that goes with it.
Shauna?
I agree with Rich. I think, you know, anytime our employees can help promote democracy and make sure that we have safe elections, I think that makes sense. I also think that it's an honor to work at our polls, and I'm thankful that some of our employees might want to be part of that.
Deborah.
I worked at the polls for years. Yes, I believe we need people to support democracy. But if you're really in it to support democracy, you'll do it for what we're paying poll workers. I'm sorry, I can't vote for this.
The background worry that I think about, and I don't think it's going to happen here, but if we were downstate, it certainly would happen, that people would become poll workers only if they were likely to be favored by one party or the other. And we got to be, we always want to be very, very careful. And the other issue, to Deborah's point, is you're going to have two people sitting next to each other. One's a county employee being paid one rate, and one's another poll worker who has been hired receiving a lower rate. And so that's questionable. Lee, you used to be a election commissioners. Any thoughts here?
No, I'm just trying to understand what's happening here. I'm thinking back to when county workers worked back. We're going back years though, but they were taking time off, a personal day, and then getting the poll worker pay on top of it. So now we're just going to pay the salary at the rate that they're currently making and get reimbursed for it from the Board of Elections, the department. Is that what I'm hearing?
Norma? Or Lori?
Yeah, maybe it's Lori.
I don't believe it's a reimbursement, it's just going to charge directly. So in theory, let's just pretend for a minute that they work 8 hours on Tuesday at the elections. That 8 hours of time gets charged directly to elections
At their,
at their current salary rate.
wow.
Shauna?
I think the other part that we might not be considering is that we have staff that are living paycheck to paycheck, and if I wanted to volunteer at the polls, I count on that $500 or $700 or whatever it is per week, and I couldn't make the sacrifice to work at the polls knowing that it would decrease the amount that I bring home to my family. So.
Deborah?
I don't see how it decreases. If you want to do this, you take leave and you do it, and the money that you get paid at an hourly rate that we've allocated to poll workers gets added to your salary.
Most people don't have sick time. I mean, if you have kids, you probably don't have a whole lot of sick time, Deb.
You wouldn't take sick time, you'd take leave.
Either way, a day off your paycheck, yeah.
Okay, any other points that everyone should be aware of before we go to vote on this? Okay, we're ready to vote? Those in favor? I'll vote yes. We'll let the legislature discuss it. Those opposed, I'm sorry. 2 opposed. That was fun. Let's go to resolution, budget adjustment, Tompkins County Office for the Aging, Long-Term Care Ombudsman Program, personal hours increase. That's ID 12676. Got that. Shauna moved it, Rich seconded. Who wants to tell us about this one?
Looks like it's New York
Lisa
State
here?
funded,
Lisa's
right?
here. Lisa Monroe.
There, I am here.
Hi, Lisa. Do you want to tell us why you're doing this?
Sure, this budget adjustment. So it goes with the next resolution too. So we're on 12677, right? The budget increase. Is that which one we're on? I just want to make sure.
12676.
Was 76. Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, so we're increasing the personnel hours for this program because of the next resolution. We received additional funding for this, and the intentions of the funding are to increase our visitation and outreach in the skilled nursing facilities. So one of the ways, because it is temporary funding, it's hard to hire staff to do that, and obtaining volunteers is difficult too, because the funding will go away. So this will be absorbed next year in the regular budget, but it increases the 2 outreach workers positions to 40 hours. So just using the funding that we received.
Because there's state money coming in on the resolution, the second resolution, this is budget neutral?
Yes.
For this year anyway?
Yeah, and it will be up to continue it next year as well within our regular budget from the state funding.
Deborah, then Shauna?
Yeah, I just want to be sure I understand. It's budget neutral next year as well, Lisa?
Yes, there's enough funding in our regular ombudsman funding to cover that 40 hours for those 2 positions, yes.
So the basic 35 hours that we've been paying, where does that money come from?
The state ombudsman funding.
So what
This is all
happens
state money.
if in 2026 that funding is cut or eliminated?
It's not likely to be. I mean, we've only received more funding from them for this program because of that. But, you know, we can reduce hours at that point if needed. But we don't anticipate it being cut.
Okay, thank you.
Shauna?
I guess I was wondering if there's an appetite to actually include in the resolution that we're talking about 2 positions for 2 program outreach specialists. Because it states in the first resolved on line 20, resolved on recommendation of HHS and budget, that the positions of Ombudsman Program Outreach Specialists be increased from 35 to 37 and a half hours per week. It might be helpful to note that there are 2 positions that you're increasing.
Yeah, and line 14, I think it does say has 2 existing, so I kind of think it says there, but it might be not
Okay.
that clear.
Line 21 says positions.
Yeah. It's implicit. I guess
Yeah.
it wouldn't hurt if it was made more explicit, if that would make you more comfortable.
Yeah, I think it would.
Okay. So,
At the 2 positions of
Yeah.
ombudsman?
yeah, that the 2 positions on line 21.
It's great.
That's easy, right?
Yeah, is that friendly to the mover and seconder?
Yes.
Okay.
And then the other question I had was, actually, I think it's for the other resolution, so I'll wait till we get to that one.
Okay.
Thank you.
Rich?
Addressed.
All right, are we ready to vote? Those in favor?
Oh, one second.
Hold on.
There was one clarification. Lisa, should this be 37 and a half hours or 40 hours?
I spoke wrong, it's 37 and a half. What's in here is correct, I'm sorry about that.
Okay.
I said the wrong amount.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
All those in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous. All right, now we'll go to the other one, which is Resolution Budget Adjustment, Tompkins County Office for the Aging, Long-Term Care Ombudsman Program, budget increase, and this is 12677. Someone want to move it? Rich, seconded by Deborah. Discussion on this one. You had a question, Rich.
No, it was addressed.
Okay. Shauna?
I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit about the subcontracts for the $43,000.
Contracts for the $43,000. Let's see here.
Line 39.
That is a heck of a good question. I think that it goes to some of the outreach work we've done for public publicity, and I can double check that with my staff person. Yeah, I can come back to you, but I'm sure that was for outreach and publicity for, and we're doing it again right now, hopefully, that was bulletin board, marketing outreach for mailers that went out, because this program does cover Tompkins, Schuyler, and Chemung. So we do publicity on like WSKG or WBNG, and we've done mass mailings too. So I think that 43 was for the mass mailing specifically, but I can confirm that.
Would that be all right, Shauna?
That's fine.
Okay. Thank you, Lisa, for that.
Yes.
Other questions? Are you ready to vote? Those in favor? That's unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Let's go to Resolution Airport Customs Facility. This is, no, I'm sorry, I skipped one. Resolution Appropriation from Contingent Fund Highway Department, Highway Air Conditioning Equipment, 12673. Someone want to move that? Lee moves it, seconded by Deborah. Discussion. Who's here from Highway? Anybody?
Terry will be joining us, but I can kind of give you a little bit of information about this.
Why don't you go ahead?
We talked about it. One of the things that has been obvious is the changes in the technology in the vehicles. And it has been becoming quite costly for the folks to send their cars to different mechanics in town to repair the air conditioning, particularly for the sheriff's cars. And the highway department has the skill set to be able to make these changes, but they don't have the equipment. So this $10,000 is actually a cost saver for us to allow them to have the equipment in the highway department and to provide those services internally, if that makes sense.
Rich?
Yeah, I'll support the resolution. I think it makes good sense to allow us to do this. But in a prior life, I learned more than I probably ever needed to know about refrigerant gases. And getting the environmental benefits of the changes in those gases meant going from a non-flammable to a flammable chemical. So refrigerant gases now have a risk of fire that they didn't have before. And if somebody from Highway was here, I'd just like to know that we've accounted for that in the space that they're going to use to work on the air conditioning.
If somebody could please promote Terry, he might have some information.
Yes,
Thank you.
Tort? Tort, negligence, that's how you learned? Yeah.
No, Intertech. We tested air conditioning, and we'd move the gases in and out of all the
Welcome,
stuff.
Terry. Did you hear Rich's question or not?
Yeah, about the flammability. So what we're switching from is, what we're switching to is YF1234. It is mildly flammable, but it's not on that extreme end where if it gets, if it interacts with oxygen, it immediately becomes immediately lights up. So there is some degree of flammability. I think this equipment has some of that safety features that would help negate some of the issues with that, but it is something that Jeff and Tim and the crew there are aware of.
Okay.
And this is something that Tim Lupo, the shop maintenance coordinator, has been looking at for a while. So I'm sure he's aware of, but I'll make sure I'll double check with them just to fully vet that.
Thanks, Terry.
Anything else? Ready to vote? Those in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous.
Thank you.
Now we go to Airport Customs Facility. This is Resolution ID 12721. Shauna moves it. Lee seconds it. Discussion. Shauna.
Thank you. I am actually relieved to see that this resolution has come across our desk. I know that the past few years, our airports really struggled to bring in new flights. Whenever we opened up this customs facility, was pre-COVID, and we had some expectations that I think, unfortunately, COVID had a pretty negative impact on the facility. And so I'm glad that as a government, we can change the path forward, and I hope that we can figure out a way to use this facility to help our community.
Lee?
All right, Shan, do we have to change the name of the airport now? We're no longer international?
That's a very good question, Lee. We're looking into that as well as, all types of things. We may have to, but we believe there is another airport that did not have to change their designation. So it's still up in the air, but it's something that Josh is looking into as well. Hopefully, we won't have to just because of the signage. And hopefully we can, do that over time. It's not something that they make us change. I do know that our one manual that will have to be changed is fun, and Josh is really looking forward to that if this resolution passes. So
I was half joking. I didn't realize that it was on to something.
And you have no idea how much work it is to just change the name.
yeah.
I'm going to say I'm not going to support this resolution. I don't think we should close the customs facility. And I realize right now it's not generating a lot of income. But look at our other enterprise, which is the recycling and materials management. When they were having trouble with the cost of recycling, we voted to keep recycling when we could have shut that down and not done the recycling. And we raised the solid waste fee a huge amount over 2 years so that we could keep that going. And I think that was a good thing to do. But I don't think that, I just want to point out that there are places where sometimes we have difficult financial situations develop through no fault of the department. And I think this is one of them, and that's why I can't support it. Rich.
Yeah, I will support the resolution with the understanding that the facility isn't going to go away. If the need comes back, we can become international again. But I do have an editorial comment. Line 17 and 18, I understand that we're trying to tie things to our strategic plan, but I don't understand what that is, what that means. I would rather we didn't put stuff reflexively in to try to connect everything to the strategic plan. But I will vote for the resolution.
Lori?
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure everyone is aware that this facility utilized bonds, and so there may be consequences to this action. I have reached out to fiscal advisors, and they can't advise us until we know what the use of the building will be. So more to come, but I just wanted to remind you of that.
So, Lori, following up on that, should we take this action now? I mean, is it going to hurt us to take the action now rather than to postpone it, for example?
I think it's hard to say without knowing what the use of the building is going to be. So I don't know how to answer that, I guess.
Deborah?
Well, it's my understanding that we're not mothballing this building. We're looking for alternative uses that would perhaps generate considerably more revenue for the airport than what it's currently doing. So I guess, how was this question posed, Lori, to our financial advisors in terms of the impact on the bonding? If we transfer it to a different revenue generating use, is that going to cause a problem?
So I'm not a bond expert. That's why we have fiscal advisors.
Right.
So the question posed was, if we proceed with this resolution and this action, what effect, if any, does that have on our bonding? Because the bondholders purchased the bonds based on this being a customs facility. So I think paperwork would need to be filed. It'd have to maybe put back out to rebond. I'm not sure, and they couldn't answer that for me until we knew what the use, had a better idea what the use of the future would be. So
Roxanne, are you in a position to provide that information to Lori at least?
We don't have a definitive of what it's to be, and within the resolution too, it kind of states that we still have to, New York State also has to approve the use of this. This is just stating that if all things align, the county legislators are agreeing to close the facility and repurpose it. So I think within the resolution, it states that it's still, we're still having to determine the use of the facility, and the DOT has to, the DOT has been great and they're willing to work with us. They're just waiting, and then I think they'll send the official too as part of the grant if this is closed, that yes, they approve this use. And as far as the bonding, the bonding amount was just over $1 million as part of our bond. So I'm not sure with the effect of that. And again, that's something that I don't have a definitive answer of what the use is. We have different opportunities as part of the strategic plan that are coming forward, hopefully within the next month. There's like 2 ideas that have been kicked around.
Well, if I may, Mike.
Well, Shauna's next, but you just want to follow up on what you just said. Okay, go ahead.
I mean, if this is, it would seem to me that this is premature as written unless we add some sort of amendment in here or an additional resolve that this is going to be subject to the information that Lori gets about how this is going to impact our bonding. Does that make sense?
Makes sense to me.
Okay.
Shauna?
Yeah, I think it would be helpful, Roxanne, just a few questions so that people that are looking at the minutes or people that are watching understand why we would be considering closing this. Can you talk a little bit to the amount of flights that went in and out of customs last year, what we're at year to date, and how much we're losing on the customs facility per year?
Absolutely. And this was a hard decision. This wasn't something, taken lightly. And, the airport administration and, looked at every opportunity. January through May of this year, there were 6 flights through our customs facility. The cost in 2023 was $273,000. We've been trying to cover that with, the little fund balance we have, and our fund balance has dwindled to, nothing. And this, we're trying to be fiscally responsible and get back to where we are not having to ask the county for assistance. That's our goal. That's one of my goals. So, looking at the cost of what we paid and the $15,000 we got in revenue, from a business standpoint, I'm looking at it going, I can't keep doing this. The airport can't keep doing this and trying to fund it without taxpayer dollars, to cover the customs facility. And, it could come to that if it remained open, if our fund balance continued to dwindle to, we try to save money each year or get additional revenue that will help with our fund balance to cover this cost. So it is a large expense that's not generating the revenue that was anticipated.
Thank you.
Shauna?
Yeah, I guess I'm wondering, as far as the notice for TSA, is that 120 days notice that we have to give?
For the agent, yep. So for Customs and Border, we have to give them 120 days notice to cancel the contract. The DOT, we've met with them numerous times, shared the information. They understand, the situation that the county and the airport are in. Many others are as well. And they, and Lisa Holmes too was on many of the calls, and, she got the feeling as well. They're willing to work with us. They understand, the financial situation.
Yeah. So, sorry, I just have one addition.
I'm sorry, I didn't want to cut you off.
Sorry, Mike. I mean, based on the fact that in 2023, we were in the red 273,000, we've only had 6 flights coming into that customs over the past 5 months. I mean, there's no way that I can pass this on to our taxpayers, so I will be supporting the resolution.
Rich?
And if I can jump in here really quick too, I think Deborah had a good point. You put a resolved in as it relates to the bonding, and maybe that would help on the resolution, just so we're covered there. Sorry, I didn't put that in there. I'd forgotten about that portion, and I know Lori had kept me, abreast, and we hadn't heard back until we know what the facility would be used for.
Okay. I've lost track. Rich next?
Yes, I think so. I think it was.
And Deborah.
Yeah, no, good points made. I support the resolution. I think it's time we make a decision here. But good discussion, and I would make some proposed changes to the resolution as a result. In line 21, where it says cancel, I would propose we could consider suspend or cancel. And then in line 22, where it says close, we could put in potentially repurpose. And at the end of line 23, after facility, put in subject to county bonding requirements.
Brittany, are you able to get that?
I need Rich to repeat the second one.
On line 22, instead of the word close, potentially repurpose.
Would those changes be friendly to the mover and seconder? How about to everybody else?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Deborah.
Well, I just wondered if that was specific enough, but I guess it would be. I had added a resolve further clause.
Use yours.
Well, it just said resolve further that implementation of this resolution shall be dependent upon the impact that repurposing the facility would have on the bonding that paid for the facility. Such impact to be determined by the Finance Department based on the advice of the county's bond counsel. I don't know. I don't know if...
Let's use your language. That's more specific. It certainly expresses our intent more clearly.
Yeah, because subject to county bonding requirements doesn't exactly cover the problem that we're concerned about. I agree with the changes that you made. to the other language. I don't know, what do you all feel?
No, that's fine.
I
with
can
me.
give this to Brittany after the meeting specifically.
So with Rich's amendment, we would just get rid of the last part that says subject to county.
Right.
As part of the
Resolve further.
Okay.
Okay, is anybody not clear about what's being suggested for the amendment here? All right, is that friendly? Is it unfriendly to anyone? Okay, we're ready to
Is
vote?
that your friendly face, Lee?
All those in favor? Those opposed? One opposed. Passes. And Roxanne, when is Airport Day?
Airport Day is Saturday morning.
This
7
Saturday.
a.m. is pancake breakfast starting. The 5K race starts at 8. It's Disaster Preparedness Day as well, so we're having a blood drive at Whole Health Department. There's tons of activities, tons of other county departments. We're actually making this very cohesive and trying to get as many county departments and other departments involved. So it should be a great day. The weather looks phenomenal.
Great news.
Hope everybody can come up.
All right. Let's go to our next resolution to change hours of assigned council grants and training coordinator from 35 to 40 hours per week. That's 12693. Someone want to move that one? Rich, Lee seconds. Who can explain this one to us?
We saw this at Public Safety, Rich.
And try. This is a position that is within that'll be within assigned council for, and covered by grants. I believe the idea is that we would have a current incumbent move into that position in 2025. And, yeah.
Anything else, folks? Ready to vote? Those in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous. All right, resolution, market adjustment for management and confidential positions, ID 12697, and I think we've got another version on our desk.
Yes. It's 3 pages, or 2 pages. Yep.
Okay, you want to talk about this one, Norma? Or Pooh?
Did you get a motion?
I thought someone moved it. Oh, I'm sorry. Does someone want to move this? Moved by Shauna, seconded by Rich. Thank you. Sorry.
We'll probably team with Ruby on this one, but we've, this is similar to what happened, we did with the white collar adjustments. We worked, county administration and human resources went through the market adjustments that were provided by the Burke Group and identified positions within the market adjustments that were below 5% or 4% on the market adjustment, and made those changes. There are a few, the highlighted, there were 2 white collar adjustments that were brought to our attention that needed to be made, so I have added them to this resolution just to be, just to save some additional paper and such. But these were 2 supervisory positions that it wasn't brought to our attention that there was some compression with the staff in that department. The highlighted positions were also brought to our attention after this resolution. While it's not really a moving target, there are some new titles and changes that we have been identifying. Ruby has been going through both the market adjustment from the Burke Group that was started, I believe, in 2022, and what we currently have on our roster, and some of the titles have changed, so it has been a bit of a a research project to make sure that we're not missing titles. And so any place where there's been some question about the positions because they either didn't show up on the market adjustment, or there's a question about that because it's very close to our parameters. There's been point factor ratings done by the Human Resource Office, and that's what you're seeing, many of what you're seeing in the, that have been highlighted and added to this resolution. Those resulted in those those point rating factor reviews. I hope that was clear.
That's helpful. Questions? Ready to vote? Those in favor? That's unanimous. By the way, when we did the resolution on the Highway Department's air conditioning, there was slight modifications. The one on the desk was the one that I assume we moved. All right, H is a continuation of this one. Resolution establishing salaries for positions designated as management or confidential and authorizing the transfer of funds for salary adjustments. That's 12712. Who wants to move that one? Shauna, seconded by Deborah. Discussion on this one.
Parity with the CSEA contract.
Yep.
Ready to vote? Those in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous. And we have resolution scheduling a public hearing on the 2025 Tompkins County Budget and the 2025 through 2029 Tompkins County Capital Program. It's 12716. And this was on our schedule. Any questions on it?
Is that earlier than usual? Don't we normally do the budget hearing after the election? Or no?
We usually do it before.
Or we adopt it after?
Yes.
We adopt it after,
Hearing,
but we have to have the hearing first.
Yeah, we usually have it at the very end of October.
I'd move it.
Been moved by Rich. Is there a second? Seconded by Deborah. Further discussion?
I thought this was going to be the end of September, not the end of October.
No, that's the forum.
I apologize. This is yeah, okay, thank you.
You're allowed to be confused too. I certainly am.
Yeah. Welcome to our world.
Okay, ready to vote on this one? Those in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous. We've got some budget adjustments and transfers out of administration for legal advertising and for UKG funds. One's $75 and the other's $982. Any questions on those transfers?
UKG?
That's our workforce program. The county administration took that over this year, and and different fees are coming out of the woodwork. So,
What else for the committee today? Anything from anyone? Brittany, thank you. Thanks to everybody. We'll adjourn.
Thanks, Mike.